All right, it's Friday, that time of the week, time for some API storytelling. Let me bring in the crew. Let's go with Aiden.
Hey, Ken,
Aiden.
I love your new background.
Thank you. I still got some setting up to do, but yeah, getting closer. My camera seems a little off, but it's getting there. Thank you. Let's get Mike in here.
Hey. Good to see you. Good to see you both. Good to see you, Aiden.
Good to see you, Mike.
Like your pictures back there, your transportation. What is that? Trains and shipping or something, right?
These are from the Airbnb I'm in. I made it out to the Bay Area finally. Now that things are starting to open up, so
Okay.
got some great art in here.
Oh, very cool, very cool. And I love the background. Things are coming together there, Ken. That's very cool.
Yeah. Thank you for being part of this crazy journey. We'll see how it turns out. Got to get a little more dialing in, but it's coming together.
Yeah.
So I hear we have a guest today.
We do. We've been talking in the last 2 episodes about some of this democratization of APIs. So I thought it'd be good to find someone who can talk with us about that. And we're lucky we got Steve Peak, who's the past founder of CodeGov, which is one of those tools that's been used by millions of developers every day. And now he's working on Story.ai, which is basically an AI that's on a mission to democratize API accessibility and let everyone create software. So it's going to be a great conversation. I'm really happy to have him on.
Well, let's get him in here. That sounds sounds right up our alley.
Hey. Thank you, Aiden. And thank you, Ken, for putting this together. And nice to meet you, Mike.
Good to see you, Steve.
Welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you to API storytelling. I mean, other than Aiden inviting you, but what interested you about it, I guess.
Well, I mean, just the title alone, storytelling, just tickles my fancy, But I've been an engineer my whole career and been really in the face of customers and listening to their needs. And something that I found was really consistent was that they didn't speak the language of API, they didn't speak the language of code, they spoke the language of English or their native tongue, and they would articulate what they wanted, what they expected computers to do. And when I heard that, I was like the proxy to code it. And at some point, I felt a strong desire to think about how do I remove myself? I'm a middleman from this picture. How do I get the person that's describing what they want to be able to build it themselves? And I felt this was an accessibility problem that was worth solving. And so here we are today. And I feel like it's generally around the accessibility to APIs, which is the language of data, the language of computers. It's the conduit of information. So what better than to make it accessible to all?
Wow. Yeah, no, can't agree more. I mean, making it, APIs are emerging all around us. So I'm always amazed at how few people still can kind of orchestrate and make sense of that world and do things in it. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. So the language you've just used to talk about it, like the idea of a proxy, right? The sort of the traditional root foundation of proxy, that's something that's in between, right? We in the technical world use proxy all the time, but we have a very technical sort of understanding or technical context around it. So to talk about recognizing that you are the proxy, right, between a customer's needs and some machinery or something like that, I think is really, really fascinating. It's really, really cool. So I mean, that isn't something that comes naturally to a lot of people's thinking. Why do you think what is it that sparked that notion that you were the in-betweener, you were the proxy? How did you, instead of identifying yourself as sort of the guru or the priest or the power or the, you know what I mean? You defined it in this different way as this in-betweener. How did that come from?
It's a good question. I dove into business early in my life, just in general, and I was trying to find my way. There's so many different paths you can take. And I was listening to the stories of these users, these customers, and I felt that technology was a good tool to solve the problems. And so I always looked at technology as a tool, a means to the end to figure out some process. And And through the kind of putting myself in the shoe of the user, I always, I felt their pain. I felt the pain of them describing something and then having to change it. I felt their pain of not really understanding the domain they're in fully before they could play with it. And also just the pain of and the discomforts of this concept of coding. I mean, the coding still today, in many ways, if not entirely, requires understanding of the terminal, which is this scary black box that, like, in 5 keystrokes, you could delete your computer. It's scary, and this is something that is a barrier to entry, and the intimidation behind it. And one of the things that I now hear stories of in the market, it's actually something that that Kin just recently messaged that I watched him talk about recently, was the concept of students in university creating their own APIs to get work done and just kind of bypassing the user interfaces around them. And it got me really thinking about these concepts more. Because I've done the same myself for businesses where I was like, well, we can get the job done. Let's just get around these things with APIs. Or I see information online in general, and I might, as a developer though, I might create my own systems to leverage that data more effectively. So this ultimately, to me, comes back to a literacy problem, and I had to learn it myself. I didn't go to computer science education path. And so I think that gave me the incentive and the encouragement to help those that have taken a similar path as myself.
Very cool.
Do you think, I mean, I'm a believer in teaching about APIs, especially at the university level, because I feel like going into this world, everyone should be aware. Do you think everybody should be a programmer or a coder? Do you think that's the right way of looking at it? Because it seems like there's still kind of a big divide there. Do you think, I guess my first question is, do you think everyone should know about APIs and be literate in APIs? And 2, do you think everyone should be a coder or a hacker of some sort?
Definitely not. To be a coder and a hacker, I don't think they're going to be removed from the industry. There's a purpose for them. Let's make that very clear. I don't think we're going to make their jobs obsolete. But what we do want to do is create a new level of abstraction to help with those that have the literacy problem. And that literacy problem is the understanding of APIs. Now we have, like, the questions I like to ask is, like, how many user interfaces are actually just APIs in disguise because of the literacy problem? It's and I think with just framing that question, the next time you use an app, you might think, how much of this is really just APIs behind the hood, and do I even need this interface? And so I strongly believe that the next generation of builders and creators are really everybody, and empowering them to that is a really awesome gift to create, and they should be literates to a certain degree. And today's technology requirements, learning terminal, learning Git, learning how to deploy, learning version controlling, learning how to test properly. These constraints require a full-time dedication to the art. It's a craft. And that level of abstraction is not reasonable for us to expect the masses to learn. Just like I don't have the experience to use financial applications. I hire people to do this for me. I still would hire developers to build stuff to that degree. So it's another level of abstraction is necessary here, is where I think where we should be going. And so applying new tools, new processes to the current abstraction will make it a little bit easier, to use it. But we need a paradigm shift, a new language to communicate to these systems in a more effective manner.
So it sounds like
oh, go ahead, Aiden.
I was to say, it sounds like under the hood, you still think a lot of the APIs that kind of power the world are going to be written by developers intentionally. But then you're saying sort of the layer above that, when all of these things get combined into applications and use cases, that's one of the areas where you think there's a ton of leverage to sort of rebuild sort of the core abstractions and change how we work. Yeah.
And there's examples of this in the market today. Siri and Alexa are simple examples, right? Where we use natural language to access the direct API, like set a calendar date or set alarm. But these are very basic. The level kind of maybe next above that could be brain.ai, which is another natural language to API strategy. So you can order plane tickets, you can book Uber, you can hail some food to your house without touching Uber's user experience, their AI, but you're accessing their APIs through natural language. And I think this could be extrapolated to many other industries and departments. So let's say I need to access some financial data. I could ask the system, well, what were my sales this quarter? And can I project them for next quarter? And that was articulated via natural language, and ultimately using APIs. So I think that there's this relationship at play to a degree that we need to invest more into.
So when you talk about, you said several times people learn about APIs. So, and literacy when it comes to APIs, do you mean like someone should know that an API is REST or HTTP and the nuances of REST and OpenAPI? Or do you think it's that someone should know that, oh, this image API is how I get my images out of Flickr or out of Instagram, and this image API is how I get it, or storage API is how I get it? Do you think they need to know the semantics and the nuance of just what the resource is, or is it about actually the technical details of an API?
I would say it's just the last mile. So understanding it's REST or GraphQL is irrelevant. Understanding the security protocols behind it, irrelevant. Understanding, is it XML, is it JSON? It's not relevant. What's relevant is that I want to execute this operation. I have these parameters and just get it done. And then what do I have to work with after it got done? What is the information at my disposal? And moving through that. And these new layers of abstraction that will be created will lessen the requirements to learn what APIs really are. Just like how I know all the APIs. I know GraphQL and REST, but if you ask me anything about TCP, you've got me. Like you got me, right? And I think there's going to be another type of user, and there many are today using Zapier or MuleSoft or something like Tray or something that have an understanding of how logic flows, but when they're asked questions about APIs, they're like, "Ooh, I know that's under the hood, but I don't really quite understand how it works." And yet they're still able to get some really cool things done. This is just the start of this wave of new technology. And so when I say solving the literacy problem, it's not necessarily understanding how the APIs work. It's the literacy to be able to actually interact with them. That's the big difference.
So this strikes me really as another round of removing barriers to entry, right? I don't have to know about TCP/IP in order to operate an API, but I do need to know about HTTP, let's say. Mm-hmm. But now you're talking about, well, let's go ahead and move up the chain. Now, I know how to interact with an API without knowing anything about HTTP, right? So it's all these chances to kind of move up. And it also strikes me as, especially when you think about voice tools, Siri and Alexa and things like that, like a kind of domain-specific language, but the domain is me, like it's my language, right? I don't need to learn another one, or maybe I need to learn some context words, but that's about it, I need to know, okay, Google gets things started, but after that, I can just use my own language. So I really love that idea, because I think that's sort of been the path all along, right? From the 50s and 60s, when we used to have to know how to patch cables into a computer to make it work, on up through tape and then hex and then, all those kinds of things. So I really love this idea. So that, the next real question is this, so do you sort of envision this as a kind of literally a proxy, like I talk into a thing or a screen, or like, how are you sort of envisioning the way these things are putting together? What's going on in this area?
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is really novel about what we're working on, and I don't want to get too much into pitching unless that's what you wanted, but I think the one important thing we need to recognize is that the current technologies available today when it comes to natural language are very one way. You express your intent, the system is making its best efforts to understand that intent and then execute program. And I do think that process is nifty, but it's fundamentally flawed because that's not how people talk. It's not how people think. There's a conversation to be had. And that's the biggest thing that's missing in these tools is a conversation. And it's what we're doing right now is we ask questions, we get answers, we rethink, we change our positions, we learn new things. And a computer should do the same. It should learn, it should try to understand ambiguity. And so when you give a command to a system, it's really nice to be able to program synthesize a solution, but you're probably going to end up with some questions needing to be answered. So for example, if I'm like, who are my highest paying customers? Well, there's a lot of questions, right? What is highest paying? Is it based on how much money they paid in the past? Is it last month? Is it what plan? Is it coming from Stripe or is it coming from ACH? Or there's just a million questions that could be answered or asked. So a system needs to be intelligent enough to be able to understand that domain to ask the correct questions. And so the answer to this riddle is really an interface that is in the same medium of expression. So I'm expressing myself in natural language and the system replies back in natural language, but fundamentally is creating along the journey a specification in natural language that we can agree upon. And it ends up being like a receipt of transaction. You're like, this is the end product, is this like receipt that I acknowledge what you wanted, we resolved all the conflict, and this is an artifact, this receipt is ready to be published.
And this receipt is something I can run over and over and over again. So if I have, if I'm grabbing these customers who pay me the most and I want to send them a thank you card every Christmas, I can do that. And next year I can run the same thing again. Yeah. And the receipt is what sort of codifies it.
Yeah. And that also becomes an API. So someone else could run your Christmas card app and maybe change some parameters. I see a future of APIs on top of APIs on top of APIs, as it is already now today.
Yeah. Well, what I love about what you're saying is a lot of like program synthesis in the past has always tried to go after like English like sentences or paragraphs or like very deep intent, and it seems like basically impossible to figure out exactly what you want. And like if you resolve something, a question branch point early in the tree the wrong way, then all the other question branch points are going to be wrong too. So I love this idea of it being a conversation. And I feel like that's almost native to how developers program is we say, what do we want to do? We want to get all our customers. Well, where can we get that from? And then we try the API. And if you just make that process more seamless, I could even see developers using something like this to get like an ad hoc API for the one thing they're trying to do. That's their integration story. And then just calling that from their code and not having to worry about maintaining all of these other assumptions. Or maybe they discover a new API in doing this that sends Christmas cards every year and they didn't know that existed before, but now it does.
Yeah.
And I can almost, I'm sorry, to just kind of jump on that, I can almost think of myself as a developer. I think you're just telling me that there's actually this really smart thing that's a great interviewer that's going to ask me and make me expose my assumptions. And that's going to actually teach me as well to do a better job. So I love the idea, the conversational notion, the back and forth, I think is a really spot on idea. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. And the conversation allows, to both your points, Aiden, as well, is a conversation allows to fail fast is a big thing. If you provide so programming synthesis has been around for many years, I think like 40 or something. And what the problem is that by the time your specification is complete for the computer to synthesize the program, it's almost as complex as the program. And it doesn't give you the opportunity to fail fast. So you write out some specification, you put it in the thing, and it's like error or fail or something. And then you go back to the start and try to change it. And like Aiden said, these branch points don't get, you don't have that conflict as quickly as the branch points. And so you want to design a conversation that the computer is going to bring you the problems quicker. And so that it can further resolve and provide that clarity, all the options to the choice of where you're actually going to go with it. And I often say that the journey is more important than the destination in this case.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, and this feels like, to me, this feels like the solution to several problems, illnesses, I think, that plague the API lifecycle is one of them being API discovery. Is for the last decade or 15 years, everyone's like, oh, you know, build the API search engine, you know, the next programmable web's out of date, you know, and I've seen every couple of years waves of people coming trying to solve API discovery. And it's not because, well, no one needs to search for an API. I'm not going to like search for an API and go, I need this. I need it in a constant feedback loop. I need it to be perpetual, ongoing. I need discovery to be just baked into and always adjusting and trying to find me the next answer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that this is a very key aspect to things. And that API discoverability also creates a new market for creators that create smaller tools, smaller businesses that circle around the API. You know, you have Stripe and PagerDuty and Twilio that were this API first concept. All three of those are billion-dollar companies, and they are API first. And I think that there's going to be this market of API driven companies that have a new interface to expose them through good discovery, and they're exclusively focused on maintaining their API and what it does, and without having to worry about the GUI, the UI, the user experience on top of it.
So,
Well,
something. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was gonna ask you. So, sure, Stripe, Twilio, these have teams too, and we can help them understand how to describe their API so that they're automatically discoverable. But what about, you know, the average developer in an enterprise who probably builds, you know, 20 to 30 APIs that are barely documented? They barely have time to do any of the things that are needed. How do we make sure that API is able to be found in these moments to be able to answer questions that are asked? They don't, you know, they can barely get their job done on a daily basis. So how do we incentivize that?
I think I think there's different constraints here. So you have internal needs and external needs, but fundamentally, I think there's going to be a separation of concepts here. So you have the formal specification of the API that describes the API itself. So the technical terms of I expect these, or I have these endpoints, and I expect these variables, and these are required, these are optional. This is the types. And then you have the other side, which is the more description of these, and that is not much. There's really not much consistency and standardization around the descriptions, and that's something that may end up in the power of a single tool that provides an interface. When you actually publish an API, it gives the opportunity to describe it in natural language, and it would scan all the different endpoints and expect the user to go in and just describe it in their own words. What does this actually do? And as you know, machine learning can create on its own symbolic tree of knowledge, more or less, of how the different ways you can describe things. So if I say, oh, this fetches information from here, well, the word fetch could also say BigQuery and Git and etc. I don't know about the concept of providing the documentation in the specification itself, and then have some third-party resource create the discoverability of these. I think that it doubles or triples up the work of the developer to have a massive specification when they don't know how it's going to go. It's a lot of work. Yeah.
I think one of the things that really leaps out at me is this. So we just sort of got into this discovery and description, kind of rat hole here. This is a big challenge for lots and lots of reasons. It isn't just the ability to describe something; it's the ability to find something, right? And then it's not just the ability to find something, but it's the ability to use it sort of automatically, like to be able to connect and And I think spoken language is a great leveler to that. Like, can I speak to you in ways that are clear enough that you would know how this works? So I think that's a big challenge for us in general. And I think one of the reasons I hear this talk more in the last couple of years is I think we're now at the stage in the sort of the API world where using other people's APIs is actually a reasonable strategy for a business strategy. It used to be, exposing our APIs or using our APIs internally. Now actually discovering and assembling and using those APIs from other people who we don't control, possibly never met, right? All we have are the discovery and the documentation. They become the fundamental elements with which we communicate with each other. So I think this is a great space to be focusing on, and it may turn out to be that spoken language is actually the best target for that kind of sharing. I'm really fascinated by that idea.
Yeah, I'm super curious what we in the API space can do to help make sort of conversational APIs, because it almost seems like an entirely different specification. Like something that instead, like OpenAPI is mapping the like the contracts of HTTP onto a real implementation that's running somewhere, and you can, because it's been written and hopefully verified, you're able to sort of interact with that system because you have assumptions that hold, and you're able to sort of get through sort of those first couple of connections and see if it actually works and get back data that you expect, or see that it doesn't quite work the way you thought. And I'm wondering like what that looks like for actually having a conversation about the API. Like, how do I address my API not by path, but by what it does? And what could people in our space do to make that more discoverable for all of the things that you and other folks are working on?
My opinion on that would be quite biased.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would be biased in the sense of making it easy for your approach, right? Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense, right? I think we all do that, right?
Yeah, so I did some work. So in previous iteration, I did work on something that we called the Open Microservice Guide. And this was the idea here is that containers, which are more commonly used these days, we have the Docker file, which describes how to build the container, but we don't really have anything to describe what it does, which is, I would argue, more important than building it. And so I created, with the help of a number of other colleagues and people from the industry, the Open Microservice Guide, which is still in GitHub today, but not maintained. So you can find it at github.com/microservices. And the microservice guide, its intention was to outline the API with not being opinionated. So you can provide definition by also saying, well, this is how you subscribe to different things. These are the protocols it uses. And you could even just reference an open API manifest and then add more declaration on top of that. And the goal was to create more observability around microservices from the point of usage, not necessarily from the point of execution in the system itself, like observability and analytics of it, but more from the human side, where it's like, what does this thing do? Like, what are the different endpoints? How do I run it? You know, what should I expect as the outputs? These kind of questions, and it didn't get the reception we were hoping for, and I'm not really quite sure of why. Besides my gut just saying that to create specifications and then to have a place to run it that feeds all that information back in to create the discoverability, it becomes such a horizontal solution, and I think it'd be challenging to expect the industry to all stand beside a specific singular strategy for defining these things, and especially with natural language, where we need systems to provide more enrichment to the actual words being used to describe, and then also searching and finding them and connecting them together.
This is definitely an area that I have experience as well. I have my API's JSON format, which I developed out of it was based upon the data.json format that I did for the Obama administration. And you can go to the existing top level cabinet agencies /data.json. So hhs.gov/data.json. And they all have that machine readable inventory of their public data assets. And that was my job for a year, to do that. And I created APIs JSON with the same and similarly trying to map the human aspect of it. So you can index your open API as part of it, or just the human link to your documentation. And been trying to create, and I'm refreshing the site, and I've been 8 years into that journey. And what have I learned? I would say, and I've gotten like Fitbit, and I've gotten others to publish a data.json file, and there's an API's JSON, excuse me. but I kind of feel like we're at a point where, approaches like Aiden's and optics, when it comes to, it's back to my question a while back, is we're all busy. Like no one's got the time to learn a spec, let alone implement the spec properly and then do it consistently across every APIs. So I feel like when it comes to this type of discovery, it's got to be that conversational again. It's got to do it in motion, and it's got to do it alongside of me, not just here's this API, here's what it does. Here's how it fits into my overall operations. Here's the applications that are using it. Like somewhere, something's got to follow me around and interview, and just interview me live and then create that document and then publish it or something. What are your, it just seems like we're all too fast moving, and there's too many things that get, cut off at the end of the day that we're not going to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing we're all touching on the same kind of thing, right? So I've taken a similar run at this description discoverability problem with the profile specification, right? The ALPS application level profile is a lot like the microservice guide, in the sense that it's like, what do I need to know here? What are the things that would make this thing easier to use? But it takes a different approach. But they all kind of are challenged in the same kind of way. So I think there's lots of recognition of the need, and I'm actually fascinated by the diversity of creativity, right? And I don't think it's an either or kind of deal. Like, it would be amazing if natural language could help produce an APIs.json, right? Or what are you thinking? Aiden, I see you're doing like special signs here.
Yeah, it can go. I mean, I think it could go either way. Sorry, my brain. So when Steve and I first met, I don't know, Steve, how many hours did we spend thinking about how to convert object generated open APIs into natural language specs?
Yeah, it was quite some investment. Yeah.
Yeah, it was multiple days of human mind power, I think. But yeah, I think in general, like, this whole idea of documentation, there's always that next thing. So we see all the time with Optic, like, once people have their specs, now they have their specs, but now they want to share with other people. And guess what? The information in the spec is useful, but it's not the whole story. And I think the best documentation, like the Twilios and the Stripes of the world, they have just wonderful storytelling, and the open API spec is sort of imported into very specific slots in the story that they tell, versus an open API Swagger UI, where it is the spec and the other things are injected inside of it. So the descriptions are put inside. So it's sort of like inside or outside. But I think this is all related in that what people really want at the end of the day, these busy developers who are on the consuming side, they want to be able to just type in what they want. Like, I need to be able to get the balance for this account and have the API given for them, get the boilerplate code, copy and paste it in, see if it works, and run with it. And then they want that integration to never break because they want it to automatically update. And I feel like there's something really, really cool about when you can capture intent, like that adds this layer of abstraction where even if the underlying APIs or services or way you should do something changes, that intent is still expressed, and you can just swap out for a different implementation. So I feel like this is like a bigger problem, I think, even for developers. I know you're not targeting developers specifically, but like, this is a problem for developers too, and something that helps us do this would be really interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely the advantages for that natural language first coming in is definitely grand, and because you can definitely swap out the underlying APIs with ease. You can even swap out different services to assist the user. Maybe there's some extra parameter and another API provides it. You can kind of swap it out for them. And there's a degree of sharing what you're doing, right? But you're ultimately empowering what they're actually needing. But there's other interesting implications as well too, where if you express your intent and the system doesn't have what you're looking for, you already gave it the clue of what you're needing. And this opens up a whole new door for the end product or the other business developers or the developer, right, to understand, hey, our business users want this stuff. They've been asking for it literally in the product. And we have an archive of that, and in relationship to the story of all the other APIs being used. So now they understand the domain of what is missing. And I think this is really undiscovered interactions with business users, because it gives them the ability to partially create a story and then a developer to come in and fill in the gaps and knowing the context. And I think this has incredible implications across enterprise as well as just the kind of the internet as a whole.
Yeah, this speaks. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
We're all excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all excited, and I think there's a little bit of delay, at least on my end. Excitement plus delay is not good. But this is what I'm seeing. Not to plug our workspaces too much, but since we're already on the road, what I'm seeing at Postman in two dimensions. One is the API network, which is there's a search bar at the top of your Postman on the web and on the desktop, and you can search. What do people type? What are they looking for when they're trying to find, and not just an API, because in the context of Postman, it's a collection. How do I get a workflow? How do I automate, orchestrate, do something? It's not just a straight API. And then the other is when you create an API and you create new API, you can type something and then you choose OpenAPI, GraphQL, or RAML. And you say you create OpenAPI, then you got autocomplete and suggestion opportunities in the design interface on what are they trying to build here and what do we want to autocomplete for them. So autocomplete on the producer and the consumer side, I agree. There's a lot of opportunity for this conversational feedback loop back to, like in that moment, let's make it conversational. That's how it should work. So I just keep coming back full circle and reinforcing it. So
that's great to hear what Postman is doing in that regard, because it's really like this is going to elevate the opportunity for discoverability, which improves development time and also creates the opportunity to see all the different utilities you can leverage. In many ways, what I'm working on is the same thing that you just described, just for a non-developer, and that's I think that's really where the industry needs to be heading in general.
I love the idea of a conversation that helps the provider actually learn more about the consumer. They want X. That's what they're looking for. Actually, we have X, but we call it something else, and they don't really understand that it's there. We should call it what they call it, or we should make sure that we make the connection between that. So because sometimes it is literally, I just couldn't find it because I didn't know what I was looking for. Sometimes it's not there yet, right? I think the other one that I've talked to customers about is using observability, using that monitoring, that traffic observability is a great analytical space for saying, do you see how they keep tying these three APIs together sequentially over and over and over and over? Why don't you offer one solution that does all that for them, right? You can optimize, you can learn from traffic. So now not only are we saying we could learn from the runtime traffic, but now you're saying we could learn from the design time attempt, right? So I love that there are these collection points along the way. I never knew we needed that feature because people never asked me that question, right? And I never asked it of them because I, as an interviewer, as an API developer, I never thought to ask them, do you want to do X, right? So this is really, really cool. I like this idea a lot.
This is also the same kind of concept works for end consumers as well too. So let's say you're on somebody's Shopify page and you're looking at products. You have in your head like I want a certain size, but you are just browsing their catalog. You have no opportunity to express your intent, and so the business doesn't know what you want. And this is I think this concept, again, it's a conversation. It just trickles down into many other economies and tooling in this regard, whether it's consumer to business, business to developer, business to code or API, whatever it may be.
Yeah, what occurs to me too is if the computer isn't mediating this conversation and making it easier for me. Like, I'm doing all of this work anyway as the consumer. Like, I'm finding out that you don't have Medium and I'm going somewhere else, or I'm finding out that your API doesn't work the way you told me it does and I'm going somewhere else, or I'm hacking around that. And basically what you're saying is, by inverting that model, like, it is a lot more user friendly, and also I can share the thing I'm trying to do even if you don't support it. And how often do we, I'm always worried about this with products in general. It's like, how much negative feedback do we lose because the person has already churned or given up? And if we just had that one button in that one place, we might learn something.
Yeah, I love it. Very cool.
It's funny trying to leave a little bit of lag so that someone else can jump in, and then we get that little bit of silence. I like it though. So back to the creating of the discovery language. Like how do we create interfaces for people to, like, everyone who wants to solve the APIs JSON, the profile discovery, the microservices, like, I remember when I created APIs JSON, everyone goes, well, Mark Nottingham's already solved this. And I'm like, well, I didn't know about Mark Nottingham. And I put that on myself. I didn't do the due diligence, but I probably should have. So how do we create interfaces for this type of discovery? Is it voice? Do I just go, do I just talk to Siri on my app and because I'll talk about APIs all day long, and if the app will give me a feedback loop, that'd be awesome. So, like, what is it voice? Is it type? Is it chat? Is it? I mean, it seems like these all have to be either voice or chat based. But then, do we just let anybody talk into it? And how do we high grade it? Are we going to only talk to the people who are on, Aiden's Christmas card list, or are we only going to listen to those ones because they're the ones paying for it? I just, now we get into all these rabbit hole things, but I don't know.
I really think it depends on the frame, right? It's the end consumer of that information. I think that frame is so important here. If that is developers, they have a lot more opinions and constraints and domains that they're applying APIs for. And this kind of discoverability of it's like we've already talked a number of times about, it's not just finding things, it's seeing the relationships, it's seeing the story, it's seeing the interactions and the analytics of it. There's so much more than just finding the API, which is what Postman and other tools look like they might be working on, which is great, but it extends much further. And so that frame, it makes it very difficult because in the developer world, we have so much choice, and that choice doesn't allow us to compartmentalize or create a consistent process behind that discoverability. But you might have a more singular tool for a different frame, which would be the non-developer crowd, the business crowd, the consumer crowd, that has a specific entry point to access and discover and utilize these tools. And then that would be opinionated for that tool. And so that, I think that's the framing difference. One side needs the open-ended, like no opinions. The other side needs closed, specific opinions.
So what if we talk to people, like just interviewed people? I mean, I keep going back to this. I reference what Aiden does as StoryCorps because it's like I keep trying to connect it to the NPR thing where they interview people about, their past and their history. So I feel like we need to just give people a way, like, to be interviewed on a daily basis or in real time, or, whatever they're comfortable with, I guess, and interview them. And then we could train the models on those interviews, and just and give them, and then set the stage for the context for like discovery or their little search toolbar or whatever, API discovery, or like what they need to get their job done on a daily basis. Like what were your challenges yesterday? Well, I couldn't get the spreadsheet to do this for me, or I couldn't get my data out of Facebook, and it made me mad. I just wanted that list of people who like commented on something, or and through these interviews we could then build a context of tools based upon what they would need. But it seems like just interviewing via video seems like it could be the best way to get at what people need or desire. So.
What if we just took out the need of interviewing and just put in a very sophisticated AI and listened to the intent and asked those questions? Because
would everyone be willing to talk to? I guess they would. We just got to figure out like what that right voice or that right person speaking, talking to them, and we could make.
I personally don't think it's actually a spoken interaction, at least to start. It's the first. Now you could speak to the system because you just go natural language to text, but fundamentally it's a text. And what the benefit of this is that you end up with a consistent that receipt, right? When you start to voice, the context gets lost. At least to a computer, they're dumb. Humans are smart. We can maintain context. We can maintain thread. Computers, not so much. They might forget. And we don't agree because we don't speak the same language. So we need the computer to speak the same language as us. And we need it to keep a transcript because we need to trust it. Humans, we can have more trust with inherently because we have emotional support with each other, but the computer doesn't. And so this manuscript, this resulting specification, what we call a story, is something that's where the conversation happens. It's in textual form. And as a system becomes smarter and more integrated with more abstracted solutions on top of it, then you can slowly migrate into a voice only with more complex structure. But there are also problems with voice only. So one problem is that it's a single thread. So if I ask the computer to do something, it only has one opportunity. It either asks me a question or it executes, right? And this is the problem, is that typically when you express yourself, there are many questions that need to be asked. And some are of less importance depending on the context. And so this becomes a problem because that context is not known by the computer, it's known by the human. And so it needs multi-threads, which is not allowed via human conversation, single-threaded.
As you're talking, one thing that stands out to me is kind of the way the world works today is we have our API producers, we have our API consumers. And one of the magic of the API is that you don't necessarily need to know how people are going to use it before they start using it. But that's also necessarily an upside. There's also consequences to that. So the fact that I have my code that connects these three APIs together in my code base means that I have the intent encoded in there somewhere, but you, the producers, never see how I'm using your thing. And I feel like this is an idea I've like seen people talk about before, which is like when you work with your consumers, you should have them like lease a different auth token for each use case and like register what that use case is. And that never happens because it would be complicated. But it's an interesting point that like this context about how things work and how they're supposed to connect is lost right now. And it's not that it hasn't been written down, it's just like we don't ever share it to the people who would benefit from hearing it. So that's another kind of vector on this too that I think is interesting to explore.
Why is that? Isn't that a business problem or a business challenge? Like people want to keep that context, that they have that context, because Facebook has a lot of context, right?
Mm-hmm. It's true. I'm sure that very large API companies have a good way of understanding how their API is being used, but I don't know if every API that's produced, especially like internal ones, has the same level of observability into sort of how it is being used and for what end purpose. Like they don't know, oh, it's actually, we return these 10 fields, but they only use these 2 of them. And then the rest of the API doesn't really matter.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely, that's kind of what I was going for about the, trying to help customers use observability. So most of them don't pay attention, but then you bring up a really good point is like, oh, well, I can tell what's going on, but I don't really know why, right? That intent is missing. So that's hard to parse out and it's hard to tease out. So that there's definitely some challenge there as well. And this always, this always goes around to intent. I'm working on a new writing project and I just spent a whole bunch of time talking about the brain and how our brain makes all these quick leaps, so many of them that we don't really credit it with doing the computation. We know how to scan a form, fill out a form, make a decision. We know what these fields mean. We know what these names mean. And we know, like you're saying, like what we're trying to do. I know what XL means for me. It's a programmer medium. It's like, I know all these things, but I don't express them out loud in an explicit way. And when we try to write software to cover for me, like replace me, we suddenly, if we're paying attention, we suddenly discover so much context, so much intent that's simply missing from the interaction because it was always going on up here. It was always somewhere else. So figuring out how to recreate it is one way to do it. Figuring out how to bypass it is another, right? So with story, I guess this challenge is primarily you want to get people to actually expose as much of their context and intent as you can, right?
Yeah, this perhaps could be our largest risk is that are people comfortable expressing their intent?
Yeah.
And because all of the other solutions in the market today are, I have my intent, it's in my head, and I have to translate it to the computer. And so that means I have to like, okay, my step one is this. Okay, let's pick it from a drop down. And step two is this, and this kind of process. And same with developers, they have this intent, and they're like, okay, how do I abstract this domain? Like, what are the pieces that go into this? And that's depending on my model of my language. If you're using Rust, it kind of makes you pay all that cost up front. If you're using, Python or something, you can just probably slap it together. But you have the consequences later. It's all good. It's all gravy. But ultimately, the intent is never encoded into the product. And this also makes it difficult for the next developer to come and then read code and then be like, what is going on here? Like, what is this? Like, I don't understand any of this. Like, the abstraction is absolutely nuts. So this is I think this is the ultimate problem, which is really nice because documents and this concept of the document could solve, because you can leave intent in there, so you can see, well, what did the user first say to generate this, and then they can also leave meta around it. So that's comments and images and videos. So you can take a little loom and put it in the document and say, like, the reason I'm doing this is because of this. Like, hi. And then there's the script, and so that mixed medium.
This is literally Clippy, right? It looks like you're trying to. It looks like you're trying to is the attempt at guessing intent, right?
Yeah, and leveraging and lifting up. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've had a lot of people think we're Clippy version 2, but leveling up. Leveling up those options, those choices, the decisions. The system is really good at synthesizing. It's really good at simulating. It's really good at mesmerizing once it learns and providing that back to users. These are really good things computers do. Things that humans are not so good at doing, but humans are really good at that abstract intent. And so the question I like to ask a lot of people is, would you rather speak the language of a computer or have the computer speak the language of human?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, humans rule, but to translate all this context is, I mean, I don't want to have to share that much. That just seems like a lot of work too. Like, I'm ordering sushi. Well, it's because I feel like this today, and it's because I ate, burgers for the last 3 days, and it's because I know I have dinner tomorrow night where I'm, like I don't want to have to provide all that context. So like, I'm just not convinced we're going to be able to translate all this context, all this, intent behind why we're doing something, or it's not even worth it. Like for a sushi order where, what's the value of Ken's sushi order, or knowing that Ken ordered sushi, in the bigger picture, I guess. So.
But at the same time, that's what a great chef does, right? A great chef reads you, knows you. You've been here before. Yeah. I know what you need. I know what mood you're in. Let me give you this.
I sit down at the bar.
What people do. Yeah.
He rolls out my sake. He knows.
Exactly right. No.
Yeah. For personal use cases, I agree. Like the intent is personal, and it doesn't really matter storing that. But I would argue for business, it's essential. Yeah. It's essential.
Great.
And we all have. If I think maybe all of us, if I'm making an assumption here, have been a manager, have hired somebody. We know that when they first join the company, that intent is the most cumbersome thing to learn when you join into a, right? And it's like people can code. It's not that. It's like once they know how to code, they can code. That's not the problem. Like, and that's why coding exercises I think are kind of silly. It's understanding the intent, which is the most difficult part. And then to be able to contribute to that intent, because it's a story. Like, we're adding to a story. Imagine picking up the Lord of the Rings book and then having to write a paragraph in there. Good luck. Like, you know, like, oh, how am I going to contribute to this? This is a masterpiece. I'm so intimidated, you know? And I think that's the thing, is that when we start to look at the future of building systems, there is a mixed medium of that intent and that actual script that does the execution itself.
That's fascinating.
And I think the key is going to be the business domain and realm, because if we try to find intent in the personal realm, you know, art, music, like, we can start going down so many. But I think where things are more transactional in business world and their supply chain, there's a lot more known knowns. I think we've got to really dial things in there and come up with this interface and find a way of fleshing everything out. I think in that realm, it'll be much easier.
Is that what Andy Grove was getting at with objectives and key results? These are our intents. These are our objectives. This is what we want to do. Is that context that's meaningful here, or is that just like way off in some other neighborhood? Right. I'm super fascinated by this idea of encapsulating and locating intent. I love this idea.
But I think there's also, yes, I think OKRs, but it depends on, I mean, this all comes down to trust. I mean, you know, you said that a couple times, you know, do we trust who we're saying? So what are we saying? Are we misleading them? And I think in a business world, you know, like, one of the things I study or watch is Amazon's patent filings, because I just find it a super interesting narrative about Amazon's intent. Like, what type of patents are they filing? And after watching them for about 5 to 7 years and tracking on it, like, I have API polls that pull the data. I look at it regularly. I watch it like feeds. I think they're just fucking with us. Excuse my language. You know, like, I think they're just, they're like putting out signals to like get us thinking they're doing something that they're not, and vice versa. So I'm fascinated by that in a business world. So
yeah, it's just flack. They're just like chaff. They're just like throwing things out just to kind of oh, shiny. Oh, like
yeah. I want a rocket sled. Like, I was hoping that one would be real.
That was real. Yeah.
If you have billions of dollars at your disposal, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah. That's amazing.
I mean, it's like, oh, they're going to get into underwater, you know, scientific studies and building cities. No, they're not. They just filed a bunch of patents to do it. You know, it's like,
I mean, imagine if fish could do Amazon Prime. The amount of fish.
That's a huge
new market.
It's a huge market.
That's a whole new market.
There are 40 fish for every one human.
It's a shrinking market because of global climate change, unfortunately. So it may not be.
But it's also an educational market. They're all in schools, so you can sell all sorts of things.
Oh man.
Okay, that's it for me.
Yeah.
Mike wins. Mike wins. And we're gonna end on that note, my friends. So I think there's no way to top that, where that was, you win today, Mike.
This has really been a fantastic discussion. This really went somewhere I hadn't imagined. I really, really enjoyed this a lot, Steve.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure to be part of it.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining. You'll have to come back when you guys release and give us a demo.
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy. We have some pretty compelling stuff today as well too, so we can schedule that pretty soon. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's take you up on that, because I think from a storytelling, I think we need to keep mining different areas, and I think voice and AI and just discovery and all of this, I think we should keep mining. So we'll definitely get you back. I want to share one tweet from this week, because I haven't really been tuned in, but I tweeted out this week that, I haven't written on API Evangelist in 2 months. And everyone, most people said, oh, that's too bad, you should write more. But one person was like, no, you're still producing it's called API storytelling at the end of each week. It's just you change channels. You're no longer you know. And so this whole conversation, I think, reflects that. Is like, I feel a lot better about my life. I'm not writing as much, but I think we covered a lot of ground today. So thank you, Steve. I think this was great.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Cool. Yep.
All right.
See you, Steve.
Well, with that said, I'm gonna let you go first, Steve. But thank you for joining us, and we'll definitely have you back.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
All right. Wow. We could have gone on for a while, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you go first, Aiden. I can't remember which order I brought you guys on, so I might be screwing that up. But have a good weekend, my friend.
Yeah, you guys have a great one. I'll see you guys
too.
soon. All right, bye.
Have fun out there.
All righty, Mike. Any big plans for the weekend?
No, sir. I'm actually I got some yard work. I got to get out and get a little exercise. That's all. That's enough for me. And like I say, I'm busy. I've got context problems myself. I'm up to my eyeballs in a couple of projects related around a new book for next year, and I'm just begging. And now that the weekend's here, to spend a bunch of time on some demo and some POC stuff for that book. So I'm very excited about that as well.
Well, dive in. You've got my. I'll create a space for you to spend the whole weekend uninterrupted. It's all you. Run. All righty, my friend. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.
Good.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was a fun one. Another good one. Y'all have a good weekend. We'll catch you next time.